Welcome to Wake Up Mondays, where we elevate voices of non-traditional students, staff, faculty, and alumni within the ONeil School at IU Bloomington. My name is Sabrina, and I am with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion within the ONeil School. And today we are with Dennis Vera, who is also an IU ODEI grad assistant. So welcome, Dennis. Thanks for being here
Hi.
today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. We are currently in November, so it's getting a little chilly, but I'm excited.
Yes. Awesome. So first few questions we have are just about yourself, and I feel like the first one is relevant to your comment about the weather. So just tell us about where you're from and how you ended up at the ONeil School in Indiana.
Yes, I am originally from Austin, Texas, and I ended up at ONeil because I did my undergrad at Earlham College, which is a private liberal arts school in Richmond, Indiana. I got a full scholarship to be able to attend that undergrad, and so that's kind of what drove me there, particularly because I didn't really have money to afford college, and I wanted to go out of state, so I thought that was the best option for me.
That's great.
And then, yes. And then afterwards, I decided that I was really interested in policy. And I felt that ONeil was the next best step for me, particularly because it is the best program in public affairs in the United States. That's one reason. And the other reason is because I just felt that the faculty and the program itself really spoke to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So you're studying politics, you're at the ONeil School. Can you tell us a little bit more maybe about a concentration or other areas that you've studied?
Yes, I have two concentrations. So I have policy analysis and public management. And I'm very interested in program evaluation. So I'm currently taking that class. And I think the main reason why I was drawn to that is because I've seen a lot of the ways that policies have affected my community in ways that they haven't necessarily addressed the needs of my community. So I felt that it was very important to go in as someone who shares certain experiences and sees how it is that we can better the policies that are currently implemented in the federal government, state government, local government, how I can better contribute to the input. Yeah, and so I think like particularly when I was an undergrad, I was president for a year and I had to be part of the Diversity Progress Committee within our undergrad. And I realized that the programs that were put in place, that there was no assessment being done to evaluate whether or not they were actually being effective and supporting the groups that they were intended to support. So because I saw a lack of assessment, I thought, hey, it would be a great idea if I could go learn more about policy, learn more about how policies work within higher education and how the federal government can better hold universities accountable to ensure that there are good retention rates, particularly within minority groups in higher education.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories about people who were inspired by their own communities and want to go back and get into politics that way. So that's great. Cool. So do you have any hobbies or things you like to do in your free time?
Yes, honestly, I'm super busy. I think that's like one of the things that I think in terms of not being a traditional student is that I have to fund my own education. I've always had to fund my own education. Like I know whenever I left high school that I was on my own because my mother would not be able to support me financially. So in all honesty, I don't have a lot of time to have hobbies. I just learned what hobbies were just recently because that's not something that it was, honestly, it's never been something that's been like part that I've learned from just growing up, especially coming from a low income background. It was always, you know, if you have free time, that's a bad thing. You always have to be working. You always have to be doing something. So I would say like recently I've started to experience what it's like to have a hobby. And I've come to realize that I really enjoy going on walks. I really enjoy Netflix. And then whenever I can, I fit in some reading. Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I hope you end up having more time for hobbies as time goes on. So we kind of touched on this briefly, why you chose to be part of the ONeil School, being like a top school in the nation for your interests. Were there any other aspects of the school or Bloomington or the area in general that appealed to you?
Yeah, I think what really appealed to me was the faculty. I feel that the faculty is just very good about reaching out to you and supporting you in your career that you want to pursue, whichever one it is. Like, for example, like one of my favorite professors, like he's been helping me out throughout the PhD process, which I really appreciate. And he's just like, it's one of those things that it's hard to get because like navigating higher education on its own can be very challenging. And so getting that support from my faculty has been really awesome. I think other things that really stood out for me for whenever I was looking at ONeil was leading for a greater good, you know, leading for the greater good. And I think with that, it resonated with me because it's like, we're not looking into putting in place the same, you know, the same oppressive systems that have continuously happened, but how are we looking to actually make transformational changes within those institutions? And that really stood out to me. I think like taking a class with Brian Richardson on, you know, how do we manage diversity and inclusion within public organizations provided me a better insight of, you know, we realize that there are systems put in place that affect minority groups negatively, but what can we do to change those and combat those particular systems? So yeah, I think that's what I think that's kind of like what's really resonated with me in terms of actually making a difference. Yeah.
Awesome. That's fabulous. Thank you. So we did touch on this a little bit, but the next question is about your experience navigating higher ed and any challenges that you faced.
Yes, my experience navigating higher education has been very difficult. First, because my first language is Spanish, and I started learning English when I was 8 years old, and I was never really provided guidance in learning that language. Like I was part of a program that really helped, but I was still very nervous, and that program was for a limited amount of time. And so going into I think just overall, like being thrown into very difficult classes that were all in English, it was just very nerve wracking for me because I also, like, I remember being in 10th grade and like this girl telling me, can you please watch the way you speak because you sound dumb? You know, like really mean things like that. And I feel like going into higher education, you kind of see the same thing. People treat you differently if you don't speak a certain way. They treat you differently if you say certain things wrong, if you have an accent. So I think that was a big challenge for me with writing and reading, honestly. But I've become better at it. And I think with just having that language barrier, I think there was also a lot of self-doubt. And it was also because, I'm a first generation college student. I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. I just know that I'm entering this educational system. I don't know how to navigate it. I'm supposed to be building relationships. What comes afterwards? I don't necessarily know what this is supposed to encompass. I just know that I'm supposed to get this degree because it's supposed to help me get a job. And while I'm navigating this, I'm like, okay, but how does this actually relate to what I want to do in the future? And I think it's very difficult whenever you're a low-income student because the way that you're seen, and my friend puts it very well, is you're seen as this beacon of hope that when you go and you get when you get your degree, you're going to come back and you're going to be able to support your family financially. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest challenge with that has been, also being part of a family where my mom is a single mother and she has 5 kids. I've had to support my mother. So it's not just I'm going to school. It's also I'm a full-time parent with my mother because I'm I'm also the eldest, I'm the second eldest, which means that I have to support my mother whenever I can financially, and I have to support her with whatever she's doing because I also have a certain level of knowledge and privilege that my family isn't able to have because they're not in higher education. So so that's one of the biggest, I think, the second biggest challenges that I have faced. And then the third one is just feeling like an outcast. And I think that can be really big, especially because the deeper you go into higher education, the less you see minority students there, to be honest, especially people of color. So I think the biggest things for me have been imposter syndrome and a lot of self-doubt, but I'm glad that I've gotten to a certain point in my life where I feel that I feel more confident and am more assured in myself. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Mhm.
Really, we hope that your experience here has been well and has helped you overcome these challenges. Do you have any advice to give another person who's also trying to navigate higher ed or coming here, any of the struggles that you have personally faced?
Yeah, I think that there's this negative connotation behind being selfish, and I feel like many times perceive being selfish as like, oh, because you're taking care of yourself and you're learning about yourself, that means you're being selfish. Like, one of the biggest troubles that I had with leaving my family was that in a certain way I was I was being selfish because I was going out getting my career, but I wasn't there with them. I wasn't dedicating time with them. I wasn't helping them solve their problems there. So that, in a way, I was like, me taking care of my career is being selfish. And I think the way that I've come to settle that guilt that I've had many times, like leaving my family, has been, like, I am working towards a better future for my family. And in order to be able to help them, I need to support them. I need to support myself first. So what does support for myself look like? I've learned that because I spent so much time in undergrad, I think taking care of other people, caring for other people, that I did not take enough time to take care of my mental well-being, as well as just get to learn about myself. And so if I were to give advice, I think to other students who are also navigating the problems that I'm navigating, is like, focus on living life for yourself and finding out what makes you full and what makes you you, what your goals are and what your dreams are. Sometimes our parents try to live their lives through us. And I think, like, you need to live lives through yourself, and you can support them and be there for them. But it's like, at the end of the day, how do you feel full is really important. So how are you taking care of yourself mentally? How are you taking care of yourself physically? It's really important. Also, reaching out to other people is not a bad thing. People are always looking to support you. I think especially in higher education, people are not going to believe in you. Sometimes I've had like multiple people who don't believe in me just because I'm someone who, I don't know, in their minds, they have a bias towards me and they wouldn't believe in me. But there are people who do believe in you, and stick around the people who do believe in you and make them kind of your group, the people that you can really lean on when you need that support, and don't be scared to reach out to them. I think those are the two biggest pieces of advice that I can give.
Thank you so much. That was amazing advice. And thank you for being on Wake Up Mondays this week. We really appreciate having you. You gave such great advice, and I appreciate you telling your story. If anyone who is listening feels like they relate to Dennis and they need, in terms of the challenges that she might have faced, and if you need any support, our office is always here for you. And if you're interested in being on Wake Up Mondays anytime in the future, you could send us an email at oodei@indiana.edu. Thank you so much again, Dennis. You're amazing.
Thank you.